you doing? I hope you're well. I'm Diana and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to check in and give you a little update on how I'm tracking with my series reading. Now, I am a major series reader. Fantasy, paranormal, romance are my favorite genres, and a lot of them do have series. So for context, out of the 108 books I've read so far this year, 93 of them have been part of a series. Unfortunately, 45 of those have been first books in the series and 48 have been sequels. So from those stats, you can tell I am completely terrible at finishing series. So my biggest priority for 2024 has been to continue on and complete series. So let's take a quick snapshot of the overview stats and then we'll break it down and let you know which series I have finished, am up to date with, am in progress of, and have started this year. So at the start of 2024, I had finished 81 series. I've now finished 93 series, so that's a 12 series I've completed. I've DNF'd at the start of the year 8 series, and I've now DNF'd 14 series, so that's a 6 book difference. This might change, so I am going to go through my shelves and do a big unhaul. Even though I've got almost an entire wall of books, spaces which have mostly double stacked, they've started to branch out into the living room, so an unhaul is in order, so that might change. My reading taste has changed a lot, and I'm just not drawn to some of those series I started years ago, and maybe if I'd finished them when I first started them, I would have loved them. Next is up to date. So these are series that there's no more books published currently that I can read. So at the start of the year, I was up to date with 29 series, and now I'm up to date with 41. So that's another 12 series difference. This is the number that blows my mind still. So at the start of the year, I was in progress, whether that's just started or had read some books, of 111 series, and I'm currently now in progress of 121 series. So that's an increase of 10 series. So again, not doing well. For context, that means I am in progress or have read at least more than 2 books of 52 series, where I have only read the first book of 69 series. So we need to do some work on that. That's a breakdown of the overall stats. So let's break those numbers down and show you the books. Let's start with the wins. So I have finished 12 series this year. And the first series I finished was Ivy Ash's Lost Sentinel series. So all I had to read was The Lost and the Chosen. And this is marked as done, and which is great because I think she's got at least 2 other spin-off series. So this is a Why Choose paranormal romance where we're following Venna, who doesn't really know what's happening. Her parents died, she's been put into foster care, and she wakes up in her teens and she's covered in runes. So I'm not sure if you can kind of see, and has some extra magical abilities. We find out that her dad has gone missing, her mom has gone missing. Someone has gone missing of her parents, and she is reunited with an uncle and ends up discovering that witches are real and ends up into this society which is very like secretive, and they're ruled by elders, and there's some weird stuff going on. We also in this world have wolves and vampires, and the witches kind of have this like elitism thing happening. And in this society with the witches, there are less females than males, so they often ended up in a Why Choose situation. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was one of the first Why Choose books I've read where it's kind of lighter in tone with the Why Choose. A lot of them I'd read since then had been like a enemies to lovers bully romance. So I really loved that. The boys really try and court her and prove their worth. So that was very sweet. And yeah, wasn't expecting how this series ended up, and very excited for the spin-off. Then I finished the Dying Gods series by Alicia Kemp. Again, I just had one book. I had Wake the Gods to read, and this was just so good. This is another Why Choose, I guess paranormal romance, I guess, or maybe it's a sci-fi romance, I don't know. This is a Why Choose romance where our girl Ariadne is pretty much a bit of a spoilt teen. Her dad is high up in the movie industry, and she ends up after high school going out and celebrating and steals her dad's car and trashes it. And as punishment, instead of getting to stay in LA, or I'm pretty sure it's LA, and party it up and work on her dance routines because she's going to study dance, her dad sends her to her estranged mother in Greece where her mum is an archaeologist who is very interested in this society, which is believed to be matriarchal. So she's going to basically spend the summer before college in this tiny town, and she ends up time traveling back to Bronze Age Greece. And I believe it is the Minos people, and it's beautiful. You can tell the research that Alicia Kemp has put into this. The Bronze Age setting feels very authentic, and I love that Ariadne doesn't know the language. So there is this beautiful moment of Ariadne learning the language and culture and everything, and yeah, it was fantastic. Completely loved it. If you love time travel, if you love ancient Greece, Greek mythology, this is definitely the series for you. And then I finished War of Heavenly Fire by Devon Sinclair. I was very kindly sent this series, and this was the first time I read anything outside of her Omegaverse, and completely devoured it. It is a paranormal romance where we follow a girl who's been raised by the King of Hell to be an assassin, and she is tasked to infiltrate Heaven's army. And in this one we have a trio of archangels who are ruling Heaven, and she's supposed to infiltrate and kill them. And it's a why choose moment. It's quite dark. We've got a lot of political intrigues. It's literally a battle between Heaven and Hell, and I loved it. I loved that there's moments of healing for our main character Ariel, and I just love the way that the relationship develops between the why choose situation. And overall, it's a complete trilogy. Completely bingeable because the first two books end on major cliffhangers, but just know you can dive into the rest of it. But so if you like the sounds of, you know, paranormal, why choose, we've got some fated mates situations happening, this is a really bingeable series for you. So next I was missing the St. View universe. So I picked up St. View Prison series by L. Thorpe, and this follows May, whose sister is murdered in their apartment, and her sister's ex-boyfriend and her crush Heath is sent to jail for it. May is very much convinced that it wasn't him who did it, so ends up going to try and figure it out. The police in this time have gone easy peasy. He was there on the crime scene, covered in blood, so no one's investigating it. So she ends up getting a job as a teacher in the prison and is trying to investigate and free Heath from prison. So if you're unfamiliar with me, or you know, just based on the previous series that I've mentioned, you're gonna guess that it's Why Choose, and it's a dark romance. So May ends up with Heath, the prisoner, Liam, the lawyer who is taking on the case pro bono, and Ro, one of the prison guards. And it is so addictive. I'm sure all the clues and the Easter eggs were here, but I was just so captivated by the story that every time things were revealed, my jaw was dropped. And yeah, completely love this series. Fantastic dark romance series. The next series I finished was Harley LaRue's Loser's Duet, which is actually, there is a prequel novella called The Dare, which I also read and loved, and this just absolutely captivated and stole my heart. So we're following Jess, who is returned home. She never really wanted to come home after college. She thought she would, you know, like most teenagers, already had this plan of what her life would be. So coming back home felt like a bit of a step backwards. She's not really sure who she is and manages to fall into her mean girl persona and get caught up with her high school friends, and they end up getting drunk one night and going to antagonize the quote-unquote losers of this town who still live there, and basically go in and break shit and mess up their mechanic store. And in a way to pay it off, she ends up in this kind of deal with Mason, Jason, Lucas, and Vincent as a way to pay off her debt, and some sexy deals ensue, and I completely love this. These characters are messy. It is fully bi and poly. They just feel so authentic, and I love the way that they come together and help each other heal. And in particular for Jessica, the guys provide like a really safe place for her to discover who she is and set her own boundaries. And yeah, I completely devoured this duet in like 3 days, and I would love more from this world. It does wrap up quite nicely, but I'm just so invested in these characters that I would really want just more from them, and so sad that I put off reading Harley LaRue for the longest time, but haven't picked up this duet. Highly, highly recommend. I then finished the Make Games Death series by Kayla Rain and Megan. This is the third series in this universe, and completely loved it. So in this we are following Dahlia, who is a romance author. Her Why Choose Paranormal Ghost series has become uber popular and is being adapted into movies, which is great, except for Dahlia is completely an introverted homebody who wants nothing to do with the world because, plot twist, she is a survivor from a death cult and the only survivor from a death cult. So things are going well until at the premiere of her movie, she ends up having a breakdown after seeing the ghost of her dead dad and is, on a recommendation from a doctor, is sent to Blackwood Manor, which is supposedly a wellness retreat in the Scottish Highlands. Dahlia quickly rocks up and realizes that not so much a wellness retreat, but an asylum for the dangerous and criminal supernaturals of the world. And it is there she has a why choose moment with a sexy beast Norse guardian demigod named Tor, a tattooed Scottish dragon shifter named Kai, a mysterious southern gentleman named Kane who knows nothing about himself but has the adorable little dog following him around called Asshole, and a sexy pirate named Caspian Hook, who is the Captain Hook. And yes, completely love this series. I am obsessed with the Make games. It has got all the spice, all the political machinations, and I love that it was set in an asylum. So the way that this series ended and the hints that we get for the next series, which is called Make Game Apocalypse, I don't know what happened to Make Games Famine, but if we get an extra series in this universe, I'm okay with it. And yes, highly recommend, but you do need to read the Make Games War and the Make Games Pestilence before diving into this one, but it is well worth the wait, and the other two series are also phenomenal. I'm going to skip out of order, but speaking of the Make Games War, I did read the novella called Devotion, which came into fruition as they successfully funded and meted the stretch goals for their Kickstarter for the Make Games War, which includes these stunning editions. So I'm counting it because says the Make Games War novella, and this takes place after Make Games Pestilence and in the middle of Make Games Death, so I recommend just reading it after finishing Make Games Death. And this was such a joy to be back with these characters. We haven't really seen Sunday, Alec, Caleb, Kingston, and Thorn in a while, and while we do kind of get them sprinkled in mentions of the Make Games Pestilence and the Make Games Death just because of how characters are interconnected, we haven't seen with them since the end of Temptation. So completely loved it. Their romance is really great and they're living there happily ever after, so I loved the little domestic bliss moments we get, but we get the vibe that things aren't great with Kingston's pack, and the way it ended, we do get a bit of a taste of what's going to happen in the Make Games Apocalypse. Also should mention that these are just so dramatic and soap opera like. It is a wild, wild time, and yeah, counting this one as another series I finished this year. Then I completed the Rosewood series by Penelope Black. This is a why choose small town motorcycle dark romance. I was also surprised at how some of those things were going to fit together, but Penelope does make it work, and it was a fun time. So in this one, we are following a girl named Eve Carter who's kind of in a bit of a rut. She has lost her grandmother, who is one of her most favorite people in the world, and has also just lost her job at this fancy interior design firm, which never really enjoyed, but you know, she's considered the outcast of her family. So she ends up back in Rosewood, which is where her grandmother lived, and it's kind of the safe haven for her while she waits for the reading of her grandmother's will. And things start turning around when her grandmother leaves Eve her house, much to the dismay of her parents. Her mother is a real piece of work. So she decides to spend the summer in the town reconnecting with her cousin and just trying to figure out what she's going to do. And as a way to pass the time, she ends up taking a job as a nanny for Silas St. James, who is the president of the Rosewood Reapers reformed motorcycle gang. So they've kind of got out of the dark, shady crime shit, but are still there and still protect Rosewood from the rival bikie gangs. And yeah, it is a why choose. So we have the three St. James guys. We've got Silas, the single dad. We've got Bane, who is a second chance situation that's, you know, super angsty. And then we have Nova, who is like the fun loving younger brother. And the way the series ended and the romantic suspense plot just was wild. Again, maybe I'm just like really paying that much attention to the little Easter eggs. I'm just going in with the story and the characters, but didn't see any of that coming. And I did wish we got some more romance moments with Solias and Evie, but the way that that plot just kicked up a notch and just like went for it, I kind of understand why. But yes, if you like air sounds of dark romance set in a small town that's why I choose and has an MC gang, this one I think you'd like. And then I finished the Fallen Gods series. Now I'm kind of hesitant to put this one here, but so far there's only 2 books in the series, but I get the feeling that I feel like we're gonna get more from this world because the other Fallen Gods are gonna look for their mates. So this is, yeah, a fated mate situation. We have a girl who is a librarian and living her best life, living with their best friend, working at this very small specialized library called Dangerfield. I say Dangerfield, but I realize that I'm very wrong and it's Daggerfield Library. Sorry if we have an angle change. My camera rudely died and ran out of battery. So as I was saying, it isn't called Dangerfield Library, and I've said a number of times on the internet, but hey, I saw the word. It's actually Daggerfield, and I'm obsessed with Dangerfield. It is mostly who I'm dressed by. I'm not sponsored by them, but if they would love to, you know, throw a sponsorship my way, that'd be great because most of my paycheck does go to them anyway. So yes, it is Daggerfield Library, and while there, she is living her best life until one night a book goes missing from the special collection, and Dagger, who is the owner of the library, calls her in the middle of the night to ask her where it's been. And she ends up going to the library because she remembers putting it in the area where the special books go, and a voice says thanks for that, and ends up realizing very quickly that nothing is what she seems, and the library is a portal to the Fae world, and it is a really fun time. This is actually not what I choose, this is an MF, and yeah, really love the world. As I said, we get the vibe that while Morgan's Happily Ever After has been wrapped up, there is still more that we can get from this world. So tentatively I'm saying yes, it's done, because I had no further books in the series have been announced. And then we have possibly one of my favorite duets I've ever read, and one of my favorite reads of the year, which is the Peaches and Honey duet by Aria, and this is a historical fantasy which I completely love. If you love the vibes of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, this is definitely something you should pick up. And in this we are following a woman named Anna who is been ostracized by her community. She is living in the 12th century and she has a skin condition which is what we would know as vitiligo, but is seen in medieval times to be a curse and possibly leprosy, so she is chased out of her town. She is really just living in the woods, struggling to survive, when one day she risks her own sanctuary by protecting a beautiful woman who has been chased by guards, and offers this woman shelter and food. And the woman is endlessly surprised by Anna's capacity for empathy, and she gives Anna a peach, and with the peach comes the gift of immortality, and the beautiful woman turns into a beautiful man, and he turns out to be a shape-shifting god named Kieran, who is the inspiration for the chaos and trickster gods of the world, including Greek's Eros and Norse's Loki. And it is their very slow burn romance across the years, and we get to kind of just see them across the ages, see them fall in love with each other, and in Anna's case learn to love herself, and it is just completely beautiful. I'm sure no one's surprised I've yabbered on about this series forever, but highly recommend if you're in the mood for a swoony, very romantic series that has history as its backdrop. And then I finished the Alehem Witches series by Zoe Abrams, and this is such a fun Why Choose romance series, and it is heavily inspired by Howl's Moving Castle, which I just completely love. So we are following a girl named Briar who is a seamstress who lives in this valley where all kinds of magic has been banned due to a treaty. So she ends up just living a very normal life, and one night found herself bound to a couple of mysterious witches by this kind of connection spell. And we've got Avon, who is this kind of very dramatic charms specialist. We have Cal, who is a fire mage, and then we've got Ian, who is the scoundrel who opened the bond. And then also through this bond we find out that Briar might not be as normal or powerless as she thinks, and ends up seeking sanctuary with Avon and Cal as they help her learn to study her magic, all while protecting her sister Ainsley. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very sweet. Love the Howl's Moving Castle vibes. The Why Choose Romance is great. I do wish they're both novellas, so I do wish it was a little bit longer so we got more romance time, but still, if you're in the mood for something light, fun, cozy fantasy romance vibes, highly recommend this duology. And then last for the series that I have finished this year, I completed the Stay a Spell series by Juliet Cross. I was again in the mood for something cozy, and I just binge read the last 3 books in August and completely love this world. So this follows the Duet sisters, who are 6 sisters who are all witches, and they live in New Orleans, and each of them find their own romance. And in this world, werewolves are pretty much ostracized from this community. They were created by a curse that a witch from years ago set upon a witch hunter. So it is very much a curse. They can't control it. They're seen as being like aggressive and animalistic, and so they are pretty much not given the same rights as other supernaturals. Obviously vampires, very, very typical vampires. And then we've got Grimms, who are these Grim Reapers and these kind of mysterious beings that no one knows anything about. They're very secretive. If you're a fan of Nalini Singh's Side-Changing series, they give me Arrow vibes for sure. So the first one is called Wolf Gone Wild and follows a werewolf named Mateo who has been extra cursed that he cannot shift, and this is causing his wolf to kind of be more prominent. So his wolf has dubbed himself and called himself Alpha. So while Mateo can't shift, and he's this very kind of sweet artist, like he's a sculptor, he's kind of got that, you know, soulful artsy vibe, but inside him we have Alpha, who is his wolf, who just makes these ridiculous comments. And the audiobook is fantastic because the narrator changes their voice depending on if he's Mateo or Alpha's thoughts, and it is so funny. So he seeks the help of Evie Savoy, who is in this coven known as a curse breaker, and it just love it. I love the sisters' relationships. I love that each of the witches have their own forte, or their own, you know, the witches don't all have the same magic, and they kind of have a baseline, but then they specialize, for lack of a better word, in a particular magic. And it was just wonderful. And yeah, each sister gets their own romance, so it's a standalone, and there is a thread that runs through all of them, and it's so much fun. I'm so glad I finished this series because Juliet Cross just announced that she's doing a spin-off. So that is all the series I have completed in 2024. So fingers crossed I can cross a few more off coming to the end of the year, and I'll do another wrap-up reflection maybe in January. We'll see. Okay, so moving on to my series that I'm up to date with. These are the series that I have completely caught up with. They are still ongoing. Books are still being published in the series, but I have read all that there is to be read. A few of them may be considered cheating because only 1 book's out, but I've read it and I'm up to date. So without further ado, I'm gonna put you through to some B-roll, all the series that I'm caught up with. Now I'm going on to the last category, which is the series that I am in the middle of. So this would be series that I have read one book, which is a shameful list, or a series that I've made further progress in. Again, I'm going to do the little B-roll, so we'll flip through to some arty B-roll, which will rotate through the series that I am in the middle of and that I've started in 2024. I will leave the series name, also a little progress bar, so you will see, and I'll indicate those that I have started this year. So here are the series that I am in the middle of currently in 2024. So there you go, there's my progress. There are all the series I've finished, started, in the middle of, I'm up to date with 2024. I figured I'd wrap up by letting you know what's on my priority series TBR, but just know that I'm a mood reader, so I may get to none of these, I may get to all of these. So let's have a look, and as rapid fire as possible, I'll go through these. So we do have the Guild Hunter series by Nalini Singh. I just have this one, The Archangel's Lineage, to catch up with. If you like the sounds of an urban fantasy with angels and vampires, highly recommend this one. I believe in this one we are back with Raphael and Alana, which we haven't had in a while. I would like to catch up with the Gilded Wolf series by Roshani Chachny. I have one book left in this trilogy and I cannot believe I haven't read it yet. So this is a YA fantasy. It gives kind of Six of Crows vibes in the fact that it's set in more of like a historical urban fantasy setting, and we are following like a Rat Pack group of people who have been tasked to pull off a heist. I would like to finish off the Blood Oath series by R.A. Coulter. This would be perfect for October. I'm actually planning on binging the rest of this series. So vampires, why choose, set in a magical school. In my fantasy romance era, but I haven't touched the Serpents in the Wings and Night series by Carissa Broadbent since reading this one and loving it last year. So I do want to get to Six Scorched Roses and The Ashes in the Star-Touched King because I completely loved this slow burn fantasy romance series. Another priority series of mine on my fantasy romance is the Plated Prisoner series. Would be an absolute stretch goal if I could catch up with the series when the sixth and final book is released at the end of this year. This is another series which is a duology, and I only have one book to read, but this is the Anatomy Duet by Dana Schwartz, and this is set in Edinburgh in the 1800s and follows a girl who is set to be a surgeon and Jack, who is a resurrectionist or a body snatcher who is trying to make a living by digging up graves and providing medical students with cadavers to study with. This one ended with a bit of a like gothic, romancy kind of supernatural bent, so would be excited to pick up Immortality, and it does give me those gothic vibes, so I might save it for October. Then we have the Spoiler Alert series by Olivia Dade. I just have the final book, Shipwrecked, and Shipwrecked I'm excited for because we do have both characters are plus size, both the female and male main character, and this has been following actors in a Game of Thrones type TV series, kind of in the wake of the series ending quite disappointingly. So contemporary romances, again, just have one more to read before I can tick it off and mark it on my complete list. I would like to finish the Beast of Briar series by Elizabeth Helen. There's 2 books out. Well, one book is releasing this month and I just have book 3 to go. The audiobooks are a really fun time and I really love this fantasy world. And then last but not least, for series that are completely bingeable and are finished and I have no excuse, I'm going with Stasia Stark's Kingdom of Lies. Again, they're just so much fun and I really do need to just pick up and binge through the rest of this series. So there you go. There is my priority TBR and then an update of how I'm going with my series reading in 2024. Comment down below and let me know how many series you're in the middle of if you're a series reader like myself, or you can leave me the book stack emoji, because if you were to see what I see, I am surrounded by books right now. Please like and subscribe. I'll be posting new videos every Sunday. Linked in the description box below. I'll leave reviews to any of the books here that I have reviews for. I'll also leave links to my social media channels if you'd like to talk to me or follow me on any other corner of the internet. Anyway, that's all from me today, guys. I hope you're doing all kinds of well, and I will speak to you soon. See ya!